What's up guys, welcome to Wasted Space, and we're back in Space Engineers with another crazy contraption. It's been a while, I've been focused kind of a bit on survival since Planets came out, and I figured it'd be a good idea to finally show you some of the things I've been working on that aren't survival related. So we're going to kick off with this one, and what we've got in front of me here is not it. You guys, some of you will recognise this as my rather old Mobile Planetary Base. This was something made in about January 2015, right when planets had just been announced. And I was thinking about, how cool would it be to have a drivable base, basically. So in here, it's got sort of all the bits you'd think that you'd need to survive. Loads of batteries. We've got plenty of assemblers, refineries, power, all that sort of stuff. What it doesn't have is some things that are really important on planets, it turns out, like ground clearance, for example. So you can see how close to the ground that is. You can also see by how it's sitting on its wheels how heavy this thing is. It is incredibly heavy to the point where I've actually had to put a platform in front of one of the wheels to stop it from rolling. The handbrake will not hold it. It's all very cool, but you know what? It's time to start again. That was not really a workable vehicle. So, introducing version 2. This is MPB version 2, and I've kind of really nailed down on what's going to be important on planets and tried to make this as practical a vehicle as I can for something that admittedly is pretty large and impractical. So the first thing you'll notice is ground clearance issue has most definitely been fixed, as has the weight side of things. So you can see it sitting on the wheels really nicely, and we've got enough wheels here to provide ourselves with tons and tons of grip. If we go around the back, we're going to go and have a quick look around inside, and I guess it makes sense to have a look around inside on foot because that's how you'd want to be accessing this sort of thing. So up underneath this wheel here we have a control panel which is going to lower the rear door. It's one of two ways to get in. You can also see we've got an elevator system on one of the arms there, but that's a bit slow, so we use this way in. And this is also what's going to enable you to load vehicles on and off the back of it on this ramp, which is nice and smooth, comes down, should meet the ground pretty well. Okay, not quite all the way down, we'd have to adjust that piston slightly, but still plenty for us to jump aboard. And we can get up and first up meet the vehicle that's sitting in the back here. Now, I admit I just threw this together as an example, so we can... In fact, let's get in it first. I threw this together as an example. It is sort of connected up on the bottom, but for some reason when you paste it in, the two things move around quite a bit. So not quite lined up correctly, but we can just jump in here and remote control this and get ourselves out the back of here. And as you can see, this is all sort of nice and smooth. The ramp works nicely with this wheel setup. And there's no problem for us to just drive off the back. Now, obviously, I'd have to adjust the suspension or adjust that ramp in order for us to get back on again, but for the time being I'm actually going to leave this off the back. The connectors aren't really strong enough to hold it, and I didn't think to put any landing feet on the bottom of it, which is what it really needs to be practical to sit inside there. So more of an example of a vehicle that could go in the back than one I'd recommend you actually use. But you also get the idea of how this back door is useful to be loading whatever small vehicles you have on and off. So let's shut that up and head towards the front, and the first thing you'll notice, we've got tons of refineries and assemblers around the side, all with the various efficiency and productivity modules you need. A sensor activated light for our little bay back here as well, so as we move away that's going to switch itself off. And then on the sides here we've got a couple of access doors that go outside, but we'll go outside from the front of the ship instead. Medical bay, obligatory cargo, and then as we come up towards the front, we've got the timers in the roofs are the ones I'm using for this ship. The timers in front of us with these programming blocks are kind of... Obviously, this has got batteries, it's got reactors, it's got solar panels, it's got all sorts of stuff on it. So you might want to put some scripts on there to manage some of that stuff, to sort your inventory, to manage the batteries. So these are kind of both set up to look a little bit cool, but also set up to provide you with those options. And then finally, we've also got a gangway. Let me turn the light on. Got a gangway that goes around the outside, kind of gives you access to all of these cargo containers from outside as well. And then... I need to jump up this one. If we go up here, we've also got that access that brings us back up from the elevator. So you can just see down there is where the elevator arrives. The final thing we've got, which is up on the roof, and there's no access to it because it's a drone, is a little UAV up here. It's got absolutely nothing on it except a camera and an antenna. It's just designed for a little bit of scouting, and more importantly for marking GPS locations that it can relay back to the main craft. One interesting thing about this little fella, other than the fact that he's parked on some solar panels, is you'll notice he's actually connected up to that connector through a pane of glass. And this works. Everything about that is fine. I can access and transfer cargo. I've tested it. It works. So this could be a really nice way of air sealing connectors in future. I didn't need it here because this has been designed to operate in a habitable environment, but in this case, it's fine. In future, I'm definitely going to keep in mind that if I've got a connector, I can put glass over the top of it. We could put glass over this entire top area here and actually air seal it in there. But anyway, the final thing we need to do is go and give this a drive, and at the same time that's going to show off a couple of the other features we've got available on here. So run up to the cockpit, which is all set up ready for us, and you'll notice that we actually have some landing gear arms on the sides, and that's because, a bit like the other ship, the other MPB, it moves when it's not locked to the ground. The parking brake won't hold it, which is really weird because the parking brake, like the wheels are strong enough to drive it in any direction you want, but the parking brake isn't. So I don't really get why that happens, but what it did mean was I ended up having to make a slightly over-elaborate braking system, because obviously I didn't want anything down near the ground to spoil the ride height. So if we just press 9 here, 8 and 9 are open and closed for those. And if we hit 9, you can see it's going to kind of release the entire vessel. I think the handbrake, this is with the handbrake on note, so you can see why these things were necessary. And if I turn the handbrake off and reverse, you'll also see that we're more than capable of driving backwards if we want. It's just for some reason the handbrake doesn't hold it. There, these things will flip up into position and nest themselves quite nicely against the sides there, just so that they, I don't know, don't spoil the lines of the ship. I tried to get everything to line up nicely so it still looks like it all belongs. And that's pretty much it for features, apart from the really, really important one. How does it drive? So the first thing I'm going to do is actually go in here and check my settings. So you can have a look at what sort of settings I'm using for this. We've got a big height offset. We've got a speed limit as I normally set. You'll be surprised by how low my strength is, but trust me, this is the kind of thing we want. I might even drop it ever so slightly further down. And then again, the damping's really quite high. And this is for a reason, and it's all to do with how this thing needs to perform when it's driving. So I'll try and get a good camera angle as we drive this, and you'll notice that firstly I've got those middle wheels set to not turn like I normally do, but also that these wheels are kind of articulating a lot on their suspension. So if we stop for a second, or slow down for a second, you can see how much the suspension is being allowed to move around. And what that's doing is ensuring that at any given time we've got as many wheels as possible on the ground. Now, the danger of that, of course, is it means that your suspensions can bottom out reasonably easily. So the counterbalance to that is to put quite a lot of damping force on, so it's quite resistant to bottoming out, but not because it's being held up in the air by its spring. So you can really see now the articulation of those wheels, keeping everything on the ground as best as it can. And so what we're going to do is we're going to point ourselves down this lovely steep hill and see how it takes it. And I have been pretty pleased with a few things on this vehicle. Firstly, the way the wheels are set up with these inner and outers has actually resulted in something that steers and handles really, really well. So we have pretty much complete control, even when going down silly slopes like this, to turn any time we want. So I should be able to turn inside of that tree there, which is a bit ridiculous almost. I've certainly not built smaller craft that handle this well, let alone something this sort of size. One thing I have had to do, and it's particularly noticeable when it comes to, say, climbing up a hill like this, the wheels themselves aren't very powerful. The friction, if you set it too high, they start spazzing out. You'll start seeing the front left wheel here is kind of wiggling around at times and doing some strange things. That's pretty much a result of having too much power, too much friction. But at the same time, you can also see that we're kind of stuck. We're not going up this hill. So what I did was put some thrusters on the bottom, some atmospheric thrusters on the bottom. It just give us a little bit, if I can get an angle where we can see them, there you go, you can just get an idea underneath. Just to give us a little bit of extra thrust when it comes to hill climbing. So you don't want these on all the time, but what it does mean is you can move something that weighs 1,000,000 kilograms up some ridiculously steep hills. So you want to turn them off as soon as you get onto the flat again, because otherwise they start, like if we're going down here, remember that the thrusters are pushing with the body of the vehicle, but your wheels aren't necessarily at the same angle as the body at any given time. So we can bash our way around. It's worth mentioning you really want to avoid trees. For some reason, trees do a huge amount of damage to large ship blocks. The other thing I've got to mention is the slightly jerky footage is a byproduct again of having this many wheels. Apparently the game's not a massive fan of it. But what having this many wheels does do is result in a craft that is ridiculously stable, I'm sure you can agree. So now let's, as we've given a bit of a driving demonstration, let's go and do something pretty ridiculous. Like, drive up this hill here. Sorry, hill? Drive up this mountain here. This is quite clearly the side of a mountain. Might not have enough run up for this, but you'll get an idea exactly how well this thing is capable of just looking after itself as it tries to go up and down some really ridiculous slopes. So yeah, if I'd got a better run up at that, we probably would have made our way up. Especially if I'd made use of, you notice we've got a gyro on here as well. This is for those moments where you've accidentally jumped and you want to make sure you land kind of level. So, well, again, we took no damage from that. I was kind of hoping to get up it, but I think I need a bit of a better run up if we're going to pull that off. Strangely, the handbrake works really well to stop you, but then won't hold you still. But still, you can get a pretty good idea of the functionality of this vehicle and how it could be pretty practical, actually, as a mobile base. You're not slow. You're using very little power for your actual propulsion. That's one thing to remember. If I was to try and lift this on large atmospheric thrusters, then I would really run into some big problems. Ah, damn it. You see what I mentioned about trees there? That's actually destroyed the rotor on the side. It's taken out a wheel. They are ridiculously damaging to large ships. Fortunately, with this design, missing a wheel actually doesn't really do very much. You need to be missing more than one for it to be a problem. So you get the idea, guys. Avoid the trees. Drive this thing like a lunatic. It doesn't really mind. I hope you kind of like it. I was quite pleased with both how it came out looking. It kind of looks a bit like a Saboroid. But also the fact that, I mean, I was not expecting to be able to get wheels to function anything like this well. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. This is going to go up on the workshop like usual, so link for that's down in the video description. And if you did like this video, please hit like, please hit subscribe. It does really help me and the channel out. And if you didn't like it, let me know down in the comments how I can improve, aside from perhaps saying ridiculous a little bit less. So thanks a lot, guys. I'll catch you next time.